Good evening, everybody. It's Tom Christie back in the painting studio, and happy 2025. I haven't posted much recently because I've been working on competition entries for a couple of shows. The Ohio show, which is in Independence, Ohio, that's coming up in the middle of March. If you can be there because it's one of the marquee decoy and wildfowl carving competitions in the United States. They've been going at it for a long time. They're well organized, a ton of different competitions, and I plan to be there. And there's normally a great group of high-level competitors, multiple-time world champions there, going head-to-head. So if you can be there, I plan to be there. I hope to see you at the Ohio show. I'm also doing entries for the World Carving Championships in Ocean City, Maryland, and that's the third week of April. I think it's the 24th through the 26th. That is the marquee show, World Championship level competition, and I plan to be there again this year. Hope to see you there as well. A little shout out, this miniature kind of displaying gadwall that I did a carving and painting series on my YouTube channel. I'm donating that to the Ward Foundation as a part of their fundraiser. So that money goes 100% to the Ward Foundation. They'll actually have the auction, I think, on Guyette and Dieter after the World Carving Championships. But I did want to mention that if you have any interest at all in bidding on this, I would really appreciate it, because again, 100% of that goes to the Ward Foundation, a great cause. Now, the focus of today's video is painting the head of a hen hooded merganser, and this is actually an excerpt from a much longer painting video that I have for sale on my website at tomchristieart.com. That's about a 50-minute video. This is about a 15 to 17-minute video that will just, I get a lot of questions about what level of detail do you put in your how-to painting videos, Tom? And this will give you a good idea of that. Plus, if you don't want to purchase the longer video and you're making a hen hooded merganser, this may be helpful to you. The head has some beautiful colors, kind of subtle, but a really fun bird to paint. And take a look at that. Let's get to the video, and I hope this is helpful. I'll also include some reference photos, close-ups of the head after the fact, but I hope this will be helpful. Welcome back. Okay, if you've purchased any of my other videos, you know I like to start out with a base coat on the bird as kind of a foundation between the primer and the top detailed paint. And this is a mixture of burnt umber, Liquitex heavy body acrylic, probably 50% plus 50% gesso, mixed together to form this kind of toothpaste consistency. And I'm going to sponge that on the bird, and I'll show you how I do that. You can choose to not have texture on your bird. The painting techniques will work without a ton of texture, but I like to have just a very fine texture on the bird to help with some of the dry brush techniques. All right, I've got an angled 1-inch wide brush. I'm going to put a little material on the palette to work with the sponge, and then I'm just going to paint on pretty liberal coat. I'm not going to coat the bill. I want to keep it smooth, but everything else we'll put just a little bit of texture on. Work a little section at a time so the material doesn't dry out. Then take the synthetic sponge, which is just a closed cell packing material, and I'm going to sponge on some very fine pebbly texture. Like I said before, you can choose not to add texture to your bird. It's up to you. I kind of like to have a little difference between the textures between the bill and the feathered areas of the bird. By the way, you can cut these pieces of sponge for these tighter areas like the neck under the chin here and underneath the crest on back to get in and get a little texture in there as well. Here's just a quick look at the textured bird, and I did go ahead with a filbert and put a nice smooth coat of that same material on the bill just to give it a base coat. To start things out, I've mixed this medium dark gray, and it's a mixture of maybe 70% Nimbus gray, 20% raw umber, maybe 5% black, maybe a little bit more Nimbus gray. Just want a touch of black to darken things, but black will drive a color to the cool side very quickly. And we want this to be a nice, warm, medium gray. All right, now I want to paint in the base coats of this beautiful sienna crest. And I've kind of worked on this side to get my process down, and now we'll go to the opposite side. I've kind of penciled in where the crest needs to be. I'm using raw sienna with a touch of smoked pearl to lighten it. And this is going to take several coats to build up the color. I've got a little scrubber so that I can scrub along this transition line and just keep a nice soft line on the cheek there and pull that right up into the back of the eye and then up towards the back here. Right now I'm just trying to get some color on here in the appropriate spots, and this kind of fades out down below. It's tough to see, but transitions back into the gray down below. So I'm going to dry this with the hair dryer, and then we'll come back and apply a second coat to the crest. All right, now I've added just a little bit of, just a touch of burnt sienna to the raw sienna, and to give this just a little bit more color as it comes out of the back of the eye and then transitions into more of the raw sienna as you go towards the back. Right now I'm just going for coats, and we're going to pull details through this later, but this is the base coat. The last step is then we're going to use the smoked pearl to add to the mix to lighten the rear of the crest. Now I've got a little burnt umber, and I've mixed in just a touch of this dark gray value from the back to darken the crown. And I've got a little filbert splayed out scrubber. We want to darken around the eye a bit. Leave the cheek the gray, and then blend into this reddish brown crest area. Try to get a soft blend. Easier said than done, but I'm just going to go back and forth and get this crown darkened up a bit. We'll come back and add some details. Now, so that the crown doesn't get too dark, I'm coming back with a little of the base side pocket color on a little scrubber, a little damp scrubber, and particularly in this area back here, I'm seeing more gray than the darker value, so we'll keep the dark value kind of on the top of the crown here and blends out to gray as we go back into the crest on both sides. Now I have a little clean filbert with water on it, and I'm just using that. The brush is damp, not soaking wet. Just using that to go back over these areas and soften the blends. Now I've got a little scrubber with some burnt umber and carbon black mix. And I'm going in around the eye and putting kind of a darker, soft, but darker area around the eye, top and bottom. Just darkening the value and then pulling that back into the crest a bit. And then blending that out to the surrounding area so we don't have a hard ring or a hard line, just a nice soft blend. Just darkening that area around the eye. All right, we've got the base coats on the bird. This looks a little bright right now, but that'll be toned down as we add more layers of detail over the top. All right, I've got the detail brush and some of the base coat mixed with smoked pearl to lighten it a bit, and I want to begin pulling in some feather flow across the cheeks and kind of interlocking very fine lines. I'm going to flip it around to get down in here. So very faint, but enough to add some feathers to the head. And as we get down to the neck, these are going to go back, come forward. Tough to get down in here, so I'll work this for a while, but as I get to some of these cheek highlights, I'm going to try to lighten it a bit, put some structure in there. So I'll work this head with this light value, then we can come back and take a look at it. On the crown, I've got straight burnt umber. And I want to go in and add some dark brown values and flick in some feather indications coming up over the eye, kind of interlocking again. These feathers get pretty dark. Now I've got raw sienna with a little smoked pearl. I'm going to start pulling in some flow lines in the crest here. Little lighter value than the base color. I've added more smoked pearl to lighten that value and pull it into this light area at the back of the crest, following the flow lines here. I've got some smoked pearl and raw sienna, and just pulling it into the back of the crest here where it lightens up quite a bit. Now I've got a little raw sienna with raw umber, just a little darker value. I want to pull it through to give this a little more textured look. Just here and there, not everywhere. Kind of break things up and give it some depth. Same thing with the cheeks, a little raw umber. With the gray value added. Just dark enough to show up. And give this some additional depth. Painting the top side of the bill with kind of a 50-50 combination of raw umber and carbon black. I painted the lower mandible with a combination of maybe 75% yellow oxide with a touch, 25% of naphthol crimson to get this orange color. And then I'm using a little scrubber and I'm building up the color on that on the lower side of the upper mandible and fading that into the dark above. Just by scrubbing back and forth, and this will take a couple of coats to get that build up and get a nice blend between the dark and the yellow-orange value. I'm going back with the darker value and just make sure I have a good blend across this area between the light and the dark. The other thing I did was darken this value slightly with burnt umber and paint in that V-notch a little bit darker. Okay, as a final step, I seal the bird with a couple of coats of Testor's Dull Coat and then cover that with Krylon Matte Finish. That gives it a little bit of a sheen. The Dull Coat is pretty dead flat and I like a little bit of a sheen on the bird.
and then masked off the head and sprayed the bill with Deft semi-gloss. That's a little too shiny by itself, so I hit that then with Krylon matte finish to knock the sheen down just a bit, but it leaves the bill just right.
All right, everybody, that's a wrap on the Hen Hooded Merganser head painting video, and hopefully that'll be helpful to you either now or down the road when you're tackling your own Hen Hooded Merganser. Hey, just a word of thanks for support for the channel and for encouragement. It takes a lot of work to put this together, and there are times I'm wondering, is this worthwhile? And the feedback I'm getting is, it is, in ways that I hadn't even anticipated, and that's fantastic. So let's continue to build this together. Until next time, Tom Christie signing out.